Back in the saddle again.
Gene, we've been getting a lot of mail now lately, and got a letter here today. It
Hope they don't
says,
want money.
No, says, when are you coming home? No, that's not the one. Wait a minute here. Oh, it's about when you was a kid. When did you start singing? They want to know.
Oh, Pat, I can't remember really, but I know that I sang all my life.
Yeah.
My grandfather was a Baptist minister.
Oh.
And of course, everybody had to go to church and sing in the choir on Sunday.
Yeah. That's right.
So,
and yeah, that's a coincidence because my grandfather and my father was Methodist ministers. Yeah.
Well, I'll be doggone.
We had I sing in the choir. You meet some pretty girls there, you know.
Always got your mind on women.
Oh no! But
yes, you do meet some nice people there.
Yeah, my dad used to start his sermons. I'll never forget. He'd say, "Lord, fill my mouth with meaningful stuff, and nudge me when I've said enough." So in closing, I would like to say goodbye.
Well, that's pretty good.
He was a fire and brimstone preacher. You know, one of those times when he preached, you could smell hell. He would just tell you all about it and scare you into the religion.
Well, you bet your life. And a lot of those old traveling preachers, you know, back in those days, like Billy Sunday and those people, they got up there and they really talked about the fire and brimstone.
Did you ever take singing lessons?
No, I never took a lesson in my life.
Why didn't you do it? You just figured it might hurt your voice or something?
No, I was afraid that it'd get me into singing pop songs, and I wasn't a pop song singer.
That's it.
I strictly stuck to Western songs. You know, when I first started singing, why, people used to call them hillbilly songs.
Oh, yeah.
And I never liked that word, especially hillbillies, because there was a lot of good singers in that day. I knew Jimmy Rogers, and he was a great singer. Yeah. And he was probably, at his time, one of the biggest record sellers in the business. Well, he was a brakeman on a railroad. So Jimmy Rogers, he was no hillbilly by a long ways.
I like that song, Casey Jones.
Oh.
You were a railroad man yourself, wasn't you?
Well, yes, I was. I was a telegraph operator on the Frisco Railroad out in Oklahoma. And I used to sing and play the guitar and amuse myself. And in fact, that's more or less how I got the inspiration to start making records and get it on radio. Will Rogers came in the depot to send his column to the syndicate, and he heard me playing and singing, and he said, "Young man, you ought to get yourself a job on the radio." Oh. So when the radio started going good, why, I quit the railroad, and that's how I started.
My goodness, that's an amazing story that you and Will Rogers got you started. That's wonderful.
Well, he encouraged me, and of course, back then, the railroad started cutting off employees. It was very much like it is today, only the buses were taking the people that rode on trains, and now the airplanes are taking the people that rode on buses. So that was just how it happened.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm sure glad that Will Rogers happened to come in that day, because we never would have got to see sunset in Wyoming if it hadn't have been for that. You left Texas when you was pretty young, didn't you, though?
17 years old.
Went to Oklahoma, and then you decided to get into show business, huh?
Well, I went to work for Frisco Railroad up in Oklahoma. I was just a young kid, 17, and of course, I had met Will Rogers, and he said, you ought to get yourself a job making records or on the radio. So the railroads in that time was having a tough time of it. They were laying off a lot of their employees. And among them was me. I thought probably I was going to be laid off. So I said, well, if Will Rogers thought that I could play and sing and I was good enough to be on records, I think I'd better go back to New York and see. So I got a pass on the railroad, and I rode a chair car from Tulsa, Oklahoma to New York. And I got off of the train in New Jersey at that time, and I got on a ferry. The ferry was on, had a bus on there to take me across the river. So I looked out at the skyline of New York and said, my God, I wonder if I ever get in that place, if I'll ever find my way out again. So anyway, when I got over there, well, I checked the guitar and a suitcase with my other suit in it and put it in one of those things, you put a quarter in. So I walked out, and I met a policeman out there, and I said, which way is Broadway in Times Square? And he said, about 3 blocks west. So I walked over there, and I'd always dreamed of New York, with all the people in it and the lights and all of that kind of stuff. And this was on Sunday, and there was practically nobody out there in Times Square. And it was sort of a letdown. So then I checked in the hotel, and on Monday, well, I started looking for that big job making records. And I started walking up and down Broadway, and finally, I walked in the office of RCA Victor, and I talked to the girl, the receptionist, quite some time, and I left and went through 2 or 3 other places. Then I went back to Victor, and finally, she said, "What kind of songs do you sing?" I said, "Well, I sing kind of country songs," and I did a couple of songs for her, and a couple of men walked through and stopped and listened to me, and of course, one of them was the A&R vice president. And Frankie Marvin's brother, Johnny Marvin, was there.
Yeah.
And he said, "Where are you from?" And I said, "I'm from Oklahoma." And he said, "Well, that's strange." He said, "I'm from Oklahoma, too." And he told me where he was from, out there in West Texas. In western part of Oklahoma. And so he says, "My brother Frankie is out here." And says, "I'll give you his phone number. You give him a call." Said he's lonesome up here, and he'll be glad to see you. So I called Frankie Marvin, and he and I became close buddies and started playing pool and talking about singing. And finally, though, I went over to American Record Corporation, and Art Satherley was there. And he heard me, and he said, "Gene," said, "I believe that I can use you over here." And I said, "Well, I've promised some folks over at Victor that I would come in and see them. And I think I better do that." He said, "Well," he said, "Victor is a big company." He says, "They're a good company, but says they have several country groups over there, like the Carter family, and they have Jimmy Rogers."
Oh.
And he said, "You might not fare as well there as you would over here." He said, "Because you would be the only star that we have over here with American Record Corporation." And I said, "Well, all right, Mr. Satherley, I'll think about it. I'll go over and see Mr. Watson. I'll think about it tonight, and then I'll let you know." So I thought about it, and I thought, well, maybe I'd be better off at American Record Corporation. So I called Mr. Watson at Victor and told him I couldn't do it. Came back, and I said, "All right, Mr. Satherley, I'm going to put myself in your hands. I'm going to stay over here with American Record Corporation." And that was my start in this business.
And And then you did Silver-Haired Daddy of Mine.
Yes,
and
that's
then
correct.
the rest is history. That was
You
the
bet.
first
Well,
gold record ever made was for you singing Silver-Haired Daddy.
That's correct.
5 years ago, I wrote a song about a man that you all know. He meant more to me than anyone else on earth. But he didn't know that because we'd quarreled. And I was too proud to write home. I made a record of it, hoping he might hear it sometime. And if he didn't, I'd like to sing it for him now. And wherever he is, I reckon he'll hear, and I know he'll understand. In a vine-covered shack in the mountains, bravely fighting the battle of time, is a dear one who's weathered life's sorrow, is that silver-haired daddy of mine. If I could recall all the heartaches, dear old daddy, I caused you to bear. If I could erase the lines from your face and bring back the gold to your hair, if God would but grant me the power just to turn back the pages of time, I'd give all I own if I could but atone to that silver-haired daddy of mine. I know it's too late, dear old daddy, to repay for the sorrow